What's good? We're back. Second episode tonight of Mystery Unsolved, and it is another disappearance. Shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. Most of these are, in fact, disappearances. This time we're going back. Remember, this case happened. The Lars Matank one happened, I believe, 2014. So that was 10 years. This one we're going all the way back to the 60s, and the second episode of Mystery Unsolved tonight is the disappearance of Joan Risch. Let's get into it, shall we? Late on the afternoon of October 24th, 1961, police visited an address in Lincoln, Massachusetts. Oh, it's close to me. It's really close to me. Police visited an address in Lincoln, Massachusetts after a neighbor reported seeing a trail of blood leading from the house to the driveway. She had made the discovery after a young girl living in the house had returned from a playdate. Okay, it's a young girl, all right. To find her mother, Joan Carolyn Risch, absent. Several unconfirmed sightings of a disoriented Risch walking on nearby roads later that day were reported. Blood matching Risch's type was found smeared in the kitchen, and other evidence initially suggested to police that she had been abducted, though her 2-year-old son was found safe, asleep in his room. However, it was discovered that Risch had borrowed several library books about murders and disappearances, including one with similarities to her case. This led to a speculation that she had staged her disappearance, perhaps to escape an uncomfortable domestic life. Evidence was later discovered of a troubled past which may have motivated such a scheme. Other theories have suggested that Risch suffered an accident on the nearby construction site for the Massachusetts Route 128 freeway. The case remains unsolved. Okay, that's quite a lot to unravel. The thing that I think is very telling is she took out library books on murders and disappearances, and what's in those books is strikingly very similar to her very own case. So, interesting. But again, that's just one theory, and I'm sure there's plenty to go on here. Do we need to know the background of her? She's just a common woman. She lived in Massachusetts. She went missing at age... She was 31 when she went missing. She has been missing now for 62 years, 10 months, and 3 days. She was also known by the name of Joan Carolyn Natras. That's a weird last name. All right. Disappearance. On the morning of October 24th, 1961. Wait, hold up. I think we need to... Okay. I kind of need to give you some background here because it starts off with something that I didn't understand. She is married to one Martin Risch. That is worth noting. Can you hear that? That's my air conditioner. I'm not sure if it should be doing that. It's been doing it for months. Anyway, all right, let's skip to the part here where... Okay. We kind of do need to know her background, don't we? Because supposedly she had a troubled past. I'll skip to the parts that I feel are, important. Joan Risch was born Joan Carolyn Bard in Brooklyn, New York on May 12th, 1930. Sorry, Jesus. By the age of 8, her family had moved to Mountain Lakes, New Jersey, where in February of 1939, her parents died in a fire. Oh, shit. The fire was later described as suspicious. although an investigation ultimately inconclusive, and the local fire chief deemed it accidental. She subsequently went to live with her maternal aunt and her husband, who formally adopted her. Joan took their last name as her own and applied for a social security number as Joan Natras. Okay, that's where that comes from. It was later reported that Joan told an acquaintance that she had been sexually abused as a child by her stepfather. That's weird because it doesn't mention a stepfather. It just mentions that her parents died in a fire. In 1956, she married an executive at one of the companies of a branch of work that, hold on. She started, she went to work in the publishing industry. She started as a secretary, later moving to supervise the secretarial pool, and ultimately became an editorial assistant at Harcourt Brace and World, and later Thomas Y. Crowell Company. In 1956, she married an executive at one of the companies, Martin Risch, and left to work and raise a family with him. Okay, so that's where she got the name Joan Risch, because she married Martin Risch. The couple had their first child, Lillian, the year after their wedding, and a son, David, followed in 1959. In April of 1961, they moved to Lincoln, Massachusetts, outside Boston, where they easily integrated into the community. Joan became active in the League of Women Voters, while Martin pursued a career with a paper company in Fitchburg. Joan spoke of becoming a teacher after the children got older. Okay, so I wasn't going to read the background, but then I remembered it's kind of important because she has a sketchy past, i.e., supposedly her stepfather molested her, which is weird because, did I get that right? Well, no, sexually abused her. Well, same thing. But I find that weird because it said her parents died in a fire, so there's no mention of having a step-parent. I don't know. All right, disappearance. On the morning of October 24th, 1961, Martin, her husband, got up early and left the house in his car for Logan Airport to catch an 8 a.m. flight to New York City. It was a business trip he had been planned earlier, with the intention of staying overnight in Manhattan. Shortly after his departure, Joan woke the children and served them breakfast. She took her son across the street to the house of a neighbor, Barbara Barker, and left with Lillian in her car, a blue 1951 Chevrolet, for an appointment with a Bedford dentist who had been recommended by a college friend named Sabra Morton. Okay. Following the appointment, Joan took Lillian on a brief shopping trip to a nearby department store, paying in cash. How do they know that? At the family home on Old Bedford Road, milk and mail were delivered while the Risches were absent. Neither the milkman nor postman reported anything unusual at the residence when questioned later. After picking up David at the Parker residence, Joan and the children returned home at roughly 11:15 a.m. Shortly afterward, a delivery driver for a dry cleaner came to the house to pick up several of Martin's suits. That has to be the most old-timey, old-fashioned thing I've ever heard. Have the old dry cleaners come and pick up your suits, eh? Do they still do that? I'm totally oblivious and unaware. I don't own suits, so I wouldn't know. Wouldn't mind owning a suit or two. Looking all snazzy and stuff. He entered the house to do so and did not recall anything out of the ordinary about Joan or the house. Following his visit, Joan changed from the more formal clothing she had worn to the dentist's appointment. And her shopping into a blue house dress and white sneakers. A little odd to mention, odd to change. Why you looking your best for the dry clean man? Joan made lunch for her children and put David into his room for his afternoon nap, which almost always lasted until 2 p.m. At 1 p.m., Barbara Barker brought her son Douglas, also aged 4, over to play with Lillian. During the time they were there, they observed Joan come in and out to prune some plants and put the shears she had used back in the garage. Shortly before 2 p.m., Joan came out again and took the children back across the street to the Barker's house. Okay, this is a little bizarre. Let's start off with this. Originally, she drops David off at the Barker's house, takes Lillian with her, and goes to the dentist appointment and takes her shopping. Comes back over, gets David, brings the kids back into the house, does her housely stuff. Dry cleaning man comes. Barbara Barker brings over her son to play with Joan's daughter because David's sleeping. But then she brings them back over there. There's a lot of like let our children play together, which kind of sounds like an alibi, if you will. Okay, so Joan came back out again and took the children back across the street to the Barker's house. She told the two she would be back. Lillian later told police she did not see anyone else in the area at the time. How old is Lillian? When was she? When did this? Okay, I need to know the ages of the children here because it's kind of. Alright, so 1961 was the year she went missing. That's the year we're in. Let's see. Lillian, the year after their wedding. Okay, so Lillian was born a year after in 57. Okay, so 57, 58, 59, 60, 61. So she's 5. How can we trust the word of a 5-year-old? Honestly, what are we doing here? No offense, kid. Lillian later told police she did not see anyone else in the area at the time. Also, why would that be important? She and Douglas played on a swing set from which they could not see the Risch house. Around 2:15 p.m., Barker briefly saw Joan, wearing what she thought was a trench coat over her clothing, move quickly up her driveway, carrying something red with outstretched arms from her car towards the garage. What is going on? Holy crap. Okay, around 2:15 p.m. Remember, David always woke up from his nap at 2 p.m. I didn't forget, damn it. So is that child, he's awake, right? Because remember, the police later said there was nothing wrong with him. He was in his bedroom, safe and sound. So at this point, is he awake? Let's assume he is. He's playing. Barker briefly saw Joan wearing what she thought was a trench coat. If it wasn't a trench coat, what was it? What other coats look like trench coats? Trench coats are pretty distinct. You either saw it or you didn't. Over her clothing, moving quickly up her driveway, carrying something red with outstretched arms from her car towards the garage. That sounds suspicious. If you see something with arms being dragged by another person, that's probably another person. At the time, she assumed her neighbor was chasing one of the children. This proved to be the last confirmed time sighting of Joan. At the time, she assumed her neighbor was chasing one of the children. What? How is she chasing one of the children if she's dressed in supposedly a trench coat and she's dragging what looks to be a body? What the fuck? What is happening? Oh, God. An hour later, Virginia Keene, the daughter of the Risch's next-door neighbors, got off the school bus. Nope, there's another kid in here. Here we go. How old's this kid? As she neared the home, she recalled seeing an unfamiliar car, possibly a General Motors model, which was dirty and two-tone with one of the colors being blue. 5 minutes later, another nearby resident said they stopped while driving up Old Bedford Road to let a car back out of either the Keens or the Risch's driveway. Both Virginia and her mother said there was no car in their driveway at the time. This is some really suspicious shit, and we haven't even gotten to the disappearance. This is leading up to it. Also, we're 15 minutes in. I was almost done with the Lars Matane case by now. I haven't even started on the disappearance of this woman. Barbara Barker took Lillian back to her home at 3:40 p.m., intending to take her children out on a shopping trip with him. Believing Joan was still in the house, she left. Interesting. When she returned at 4:15 p.m., Lillian came back to the Barker's house, telling Barbara, "Mommy is gone and the kitchen is covered with red paint." See, that's what a 5-year-old says. It's red paint. Lillian's brother was found crying in his crib because his diaper needed to be changed. After Barbara went to the Risch house herself and verified Lillian's account, she called the police at 4:33 p.m. Okay. Theories? So far, I couldn't tell you. This is some really baffling shit. And isn't it always convenient that there's always people around the neighborhood who think they see something, but in reality, they probably don't see shit? Like, oh yes, I recall the milkman dropping off milk at 2:45. Do you now? Like, oh, I saw a car. It was a blue Chevrolet pulling out of the driveway. Did you see that? Like, what are we doing? Oh, God. Investigation. I don't know why I gave it a French accent. All right, how long is this? It's really, really fucking long. Holy shit, I'm still scrolling. Holy crap. We're going to be here a while, folks. Holy shit. I'll try to condense it as best as I can. Holy crap. Sergeant Mike McHugh of the Lincoln Police arrived at the house within 5 minutes. Was the police office right down the street? Holy shit. After briefly talking with Barker, he went into the Risch house. In the kitchen, he found the blood smears on the walls, an overturned table, and the handset on the wall-mounted telephone ripped loose and thrown in the wastebasket, which had been taken from its usual place under the sink and left in the middle of the floor. McHugh believed Risch might have committed suicide and searched the house. I thought we were done with this. I thought only 40s cops did this. For those that watch this video, for those that watch my videos, you'll know that I have a serious problem with police immediately assuming that they can't find a body, and the first thing that they think of is the person must have committed suicide, when it's clearly obvious that suicide's probably not the reason. And it was mostly cops in the 40s, but here we are in 1961, and we have fucking cops immediately saying that she committed suicide. But yet, you don't see a goddamn body in the house, do you? Do you now? And searched the house for her body. When they did not find it, he realized he would need backup searching the surrounding area. He called the desk officer who had dispatched him to advise him to call the police chief, Leo Algeo. It was possible, he believed, that the entire department would need to be involved. For one woman? It was just a couple blood smears on the walls and a tipped-over table? And a telephone in the wastebasket? Not where it should be? You guys following me? All right. That means you have to involve the entire police department? And I imagine they'll be there in, 5 minutes too, because McHugh was. The Lincoln police called the local hospitals and asked to be notified if a woman matching Risch's description showed up, or already had been admitted. Barker had called Martin's company to find out where he was. When she learned he was in New York on business, the Massachusetts State Police called him there to inform him of the family emergency. He changed his plans and caught the next flight back to Boston. In the house, police found further clues. 4 letters delivered that day to the mailbox at the foot of the driveway had not yet been brought in. In the kitchen, the telephone directory was found to have been opened to the page where emergency numbers could be written down, although none had been. Telephone directory? Oh, a phone book. Ah, I lost the page. Hold on, sorry. I've never heard of a phone book called a telephone directory. And most of you people, if you're millennials, probably don't even know what a fucking phone book is. It was a telephone directory, apparently. In the kitchen, the telephone directory was found to have... Okay, we already went to that. Martin explained that an empty liquor bottle found in the wastebasket was one he and his wife had finished the night before, but could not explain where empty beer bottles found in it might have come from. Okay. Joan had left behind the trench coat. So it was a trench coat. Obviously. It either was or it wasn't. It couldn't have appeared to be a trench coat because nothing looks like a fucking trench coat. Oh, this case is getting to me. It's getting weird. Joan had left behind the trench coat she had worn to the dentist that morning, but appeared to have taken a plainer cloth coat. Also in the house was her pocketbook. Investigators determined that after her purchases, since cashing the check the previous evening, she would have had less than $10 left. How would you know that? Why is that relevant? Oh, because she's not around. And usually when someone goes disappearing, you kind of need to know how much money they have. I'm on it. I'm on the case. In canvassing the neighborhood, police found several other residents who reported possible sightings of Joan after Barker had last seen her. At 2:45 p.m. that afternoon, a woman wearing clothing similar to what Risch had last been seen in, along with a kerchief over her head tied around her chin, was seen walking along the north side of Massachusetts Route 2A, west of its junction with Old Bedford Road, headed toward Concord. She appeared to be wandering, hunched over as if she were cold, and appeared untidy. A similarly dressed woman with blood running down her legs was seen walking north on Route 128, Meridian Strip in Waltham between 3:15 p.m. and 3:30 p.m., just north of Winter Street. She too seemed disoriented and appeared to be cradling something at her stomach. Another sighting reported around 4:30 p.m. had the woman walking south along Route 128 near Trapello Road. Police also received some reports of the car that Virginia Keene had reported in the Risch's driveway. Their regular milkman stated that he had seen a car of that description when he made his morning delivery at the Risch's residence 5 days earlier. Another neighbor told investigators she had seen a blue two-tone car parked on Sunnyside Lane, a street that intersected Route 2A near Old Bedford Road at 4:15 p.m. She saw a man get out, cut some branches from nearby woods, and put them in his vehicle. Another man said he saw a light blue 1959 Ford sedan parked along Sunnyside Lane at 2:45 p.m. A lot of 2:45 p.m.s. Everyone seems to remember what they did at 2:45 p.m. They saw suspicious activity. Oh, good Lord. Although the blood evidence was plentiful, investigators could not conclude from what it might have occurred. Large smears were on the kitchen walls and floor. Some were on the phone as well. 3 bloody fingerprints were unidentified. In Joan's absence, they could not be compared with hers. A roll of paper towels was on the floor. One had been used to wipe up some blood, possibly off of a hand. Also, a coverall and pair of underpants belonging to David were on the floor. Both were bloodied as well, possibly from an attempt to clean up the blood. The coverall also appeared to have been pressed into the floor, as if a heavy weight such as a body had lain on them for some time. Well, remember, Barbara supposedly saw Joan in a trench coat dragging something red. Oh yeah. Such as a body had lain on them for some time. Police said that later, while the bloodstains in the kitchen might have resulted from a struggle, they seemed more consistent with someone staggering around and trying to support themselves following an injury. But the kitchen was not the only place blood was found, and the blood found elsewhere in the house as well as outside complicated that narrative. A 1/8 inch wide drop was on the first step of the stairway. Two more similar sized were found at the top of the stairs, along with 8 in the master bedroom, and one near a window in the children's bedroom. Okay, I'm just going to go off on a whim here and assume that the blood was Joan's. Another trail of blood led out of the kitchen into the driveway. It ended at Joan's car, which was stained in 3 places: the right rear fender, the left side of the hood, near the windshield, in the very center of the trunk. Investigators found this last one particularly hard to interpret. Okay, wait a minute. Let me reread that. This was all blood stains. In the very center of the trunk. In the trunk. Remember, Barbara Barker said she saw what looked like arms and stuff, and she said that she was chasing the kids. It sounds like Joan Risch dragged a body into her house. But then again, it would be blood smears, not drops. Right? It could not be determined where the bleeding might have started, upstairs, in the kitchen, or the driveway. All possibilities were supported by the evidence. Also open was the question of whether Joan had left under her own power, or had been accompanied by it, or even carried, perhaps involuntarily. The end of the trail in the driveway might have indicated that she had gotten into another car at that point, but that was not certain either. So obviously, if there was another body, that person must not have been dead. I don't know. This is really goddamn bizarre. I can't figure this out. What investigators did not find was also significant. Despite the large bloody smears on the kitchen floor and evidence of activity elsewhere in the house, there were no bloody footprints. Whoever had been walking there had either been extremely careful or very fortunate. The blood was found to have been type O, which is both the most common and the type Risch was known to have. So obviously it was her blood. Library records. This is important because why? Why is this important? Because remember she took library books? Oh, yeah. In the wake of Joan's disappearance, Serene Gerson, a reporter with Lincoln Fence Viewer newspaper, went to the town's public library to research similar cases as the background. In one of the books she checked out about the purported disappearance of Brigham Young's 27th wife, that's totally freaking random, she saw that Joan had borrowed the book in September, a month before her disappearance. Also, Brigham Young had 20... What? Brigham Young had that many wives? Oh, that's right, he's a Mormon. Oh, yeah, that's right, okay. They can do that sort of crazy shit, right? In another Into Thin Air about a woman who, like Risch, had left behind blood smears on a towel when she went missing, Gershon again found Risch's signature on the checkout card. Gershon reported her findings in the newspaper. A group of library volunteers who looked at the records found that Joan, a regular borrower, had taken out 25 books over the summer of 1961, many of which also had to do with murders and missing person cases. Based on this, Gershon and her colleagues at the newspaper believed Joan may have staged the crime scene and disappeared voluntarily. All right, well, at least we got something to go off of, because I was baffled. All right, we're almost done. Police investigated a man on whom neighbors had cast suspicion, Robert Foster of East Walpole. In 1959, Congress had designated an area which included the Risch's neighborhood as Minuteman National Historic Park, recognizing its historical importance. Blah blah blah. Why is this important? Recognizing its historical importance as the route British troops had taken when they marched out of Boston. Okay, why are we? Blah blah blah. Foster, a purchasing agent with the National Park Service, had been visiting homes in the area to discuss the project. Okay. According to state police, who interviewed him a week after the disappearance, some of the women Foster had talked to felt he had overstayed his welcome. Records show Foster had visited the Risch home on September 25th, a month before Joan vanished. On the day she disappeared, Foster told the detective he went out for lunch with his supervisor around 1 p.m. By 3 p.m., he recalled he went back to the Lincoln area to meet with a property appraiser. The supervisor verified the account and also vouched for the two civil engineers who had been working in the area, had been working in the area for him making his preparations for the park, saying they were in his office by 3 p.m. as well. Okay. And we're done with that part. Rewards for the information that could close the case were offered by state police. The town of Lincoln and the Boston Record American newspaper, which ran extensive package of articles about the case on the first weekend of 1962. However, no useful leads were developed after the initial investigation. Bodies found in the region in later years proved not to be Joan. Martin continued to live in the same house and raised his children. He never had his wife declared legally dead. In 1975, the National Park Service, in developing the area for the park, bought the Risch's and others' properties and moved the Risch house to Lexington. Martin moved to another house nearby. He died in 2009 at the age of 79. Whew. Wow. All right. We got theories for this one, and we better have, because I don't got any. With no further evidence emerging after the initial investigation, all theories of Joan's fate have remained, and the case maintains its open status. Joan's library book history and her difficult past have supported Gershon's theory that her disappearance was planned as a way to escape a dissatisfying life. But Sarah Morton, the college friend who had recommended the dentist Risch visited that morning, said that was unlikely, as Joan was very content with her life as a suburban housewife. My thoughts on that are interesting because, let me just say this. Remember, the first thing to note here is, would she really just, if she was that dissatisfied with her life, would she do it? Well, one theory is her husband was out of town, right? But she has her two kids. But if you remember, one of the things I had said was I found it weird that she had one of the kids over across the street. Then they were back at her house. Then the neighbor's kid was brought over. Then they brought them all back to her house, but David was still in the house. So maybe she kind of figured, okay, Barbara will probably come by anyway and see my child. I don't know. It definitely seems like she disappeared. And I think the children being over at the neighbor's house back and forth is a little telling of that. I think Joan is almost certainly dead, Morton told the Boston Globe in 1996. She would never have left her family on her own. So she says, but the reported sightings of a woman who matched Risch's description walking along area roads have lent support to a theory that she met an accidental end. In the 1990s, one investigator believed that she might have become disoriented and fallen into a pit along the Route 128 construction site, where she might not have been able to extricate herself, and ended up buried when the road was finished. Jesus. Martin rarely talked about the case in his later years. On one occasion when he had, the Globe reported he believed his wife was still alive. He speculated that she may have had amnesia or a psychological break and had forgotten how to return home. Joan neither had a history of mental illness nor had any cases been reported in her family. Leo Algeo continued to pursue the case even after his retirement from the police force in 1970. He told the Globe it was sort of a stone around his neck. He had a theory but preferred not to share it. I thought they'd find a body or bones or something. Things do turn up. People don't disappear without a trace. Algeo, too, died in 2009, the last of the original investigators on the case. Alright, so the three theories are: she disappeared on her own volition because she didn't like the life she was living. 2, although it's not really mentioned, somebody else took her and she got into that car and they drove off. Or 3, she wandered off, had a psychological break, and she was still alive. Which one do I think it is? I think the first one is a little interesting, and the second one is. I think maybe she had a dispute with someone, but at the same time, her checking out 21 library books over the course of a year is striking. And the fact that they were all murder books and disappearances is telling. So I think it's the first theory. I think she staged it. I think it was a little messy, and then maybe she unfortunately met an untimely accidental end on Route 128. There we go. Almost 40 minutes that took. That case was starting to get a little too maddening for my liking. What do you think happened? Do you think that she staged all of this and disappeared off into the sunset? Do you think somebody else was involved? Or do you think she was still alive up until the 90s? Do let me know in a comment. You won't, but I'll say it anyway. I do hope you enjoyed spending the night with me here live on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for Mystery Unsolved, Lars Matank, and of course right now, the disappearance of Joan Risch. Do stay tuned next Friday, where I will try to be on time next time. For Mystery Unsolved, this is Justin Bienvenu, and